Yes.
This time, I'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for the purpose of agenda review for next week's business session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer?
Here.
Commissioner Allen? Here. Commissioner Click is absent. Commissioner Osterhaus?
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
And Chairman Eilert?
Here. We do have a quorum present. Would the clerk please read the proposed consent agenda items?
Item number 1, consider approving the March 8, 2018 business session minutes. Item number 2, consider appointing Jeff Myers as the 2nd District Representative to the Park and Recreation Commission effective April 1, 2018 through January 31, 2020. Item number 3, consider reappointing Charles Lenore as the Education Representative through February 6, 2021, and Mandy Stuckey as the Chairman's Representative through February 6, 2020 to the Community Corrections Advisory Board. And item number 4, consider appointing Fabian Shepard as the 5th District Representative to the Public Art Commission through December 31, 2020.
Okay. Any questions on the appointments? All right. They will remain on consent. Proposed action agenda item number 5.
Resolution number 016-18, conduct a public hearing and consider transferring the Johnson County District Coroner from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office to the Johnson County Department of Health and Environment and amending resolution number 036-01 and the Johnson County Code.
Mr. Thompson.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Maury Thompson, Acting Deputy County Manager. As the clerk just indicated, this is a public hearing this morning to consider the transfer of the District Coroner from the Sheriff's Office to the Department of Health and Environment. We've had considerable conversation about that item earlier this morning. This is to make the organizational change consistent with the functional authority shift that we've been talking about actually for a number of months now. I stand actually before you this morning making this recommendation on behalf of the interim county manager. I do that, note that pursuant to county charter, which is the language in the charter. So the information you have in front of you this morning is a briefing sheet, a resolution, and again the notice of the public hearing, which was published in the Olathe News this past Saturday, March 17th. So consistent, as I said, with the county charter, the interim county manager is recommending this organizational change and will be presenting it formally to this body for consideration at your next scheduled business session next Thursday. Just a bit of background, in early 2016, the Board of County Commissioners received the Coroner's Office study. Included in that study was a recommendation that consideration be given to move the administrative support of the coroner from the Office of the Sheriff to another entity in order to establish clearly the independence of the coroner from law enforcement. The study noted that in some jurisdictions, management of the coroner has been assigned to the health department. So after considerable study and conversation with those directly affected, the interim county manager makes this recommendation for your consideration. I would note that this does have the concurrence of the sheriff, the district attorney, and the coroner. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Okay. Well, this does require a public hearing, so it will remain on action. Questions, Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this move makes a lot of sense. Offline, before next week, I would be interested in learning a little bit more about the analysis that you performed on the efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability issue, if we could. Thank you.
All right. Item number 6.
Resolution number WD 18-012. Conduct a public hearing to consider authorizing additional funds in the amount of $306,678,678 for construction phase services of the Tomahawk Creek Wastewater Treatment Facility Expansion Project, increasing the total project authorization amount to $334,990,678, approving a contract amendment with McCarthy Building Companies, Inc. for construction manager at risk construction phase services, an amount not to exceed $267,892,045, approving a contract amendment with Black & Veatch Corporation for construction phase engineering services, and an amount not to exceed $23,131,462, reduction of project administration fees, and authorizing the wastewater general manager to execute the necessary utility relocation and upgrade agreements with public utility companies for the project.
Susan, we have had a committee of the whole meeting discussing this project, certainly in more depth. Comments you would like to make?
Yes, sir, Chairman and Commissioners. Susan Picaric with Wastewater, thank you. We were going for the longest issue statement ever before Linda retires here. I do have comments I can make. I can go through those briefly. Next week I have some members of the project team here today. Next week I'll have that project team back because I would like to recognize them for the work that they've done. As you know, the Tomahawk Creek Wastewater Treatment Facility receives flow. This is the existing facility on your map right now. It receives flow from a large area, the Indian Creek watershed, Lower Indian Creek watershed, and the Tomahawk Creek watersheds. Those areas are shown here in yellow and kind of an orange color, as well as a portion of the Dykes Branch watershed. These are essentially cities of Overland Park, Olathe, Leawood, Prairie Village. Currently, we treat about 40% of the flow that arrives at that site, and we send the rest of the flow to the city of Kansas City, Missouri to treat for us. Through evaluations that we've conducted the past few years, treating all the flow at that site is the best decision for the best long-term alternative for this particular site. The board's authorized funding for pre-construction phase as well as design phase and construction manager at risk. Earlier this year, the board also authorized funding for relocating electrical utility lines. Since that time, as you mentioned, on March 8th, we discussed the work that the project team has done in order to assemble the cost model for the project. And that's been continuously updated throughout the project, including assessing value engineering impacts on the project. The CMAR, or Construction Manager at Risk, issued 2 bid packages that were released for the project. In all cases, the county's treasury and financial management staff, as well as wastewater staff, were present when those bids were open. And on packages where the construction manager at risk, or McCarthy, were submitting proposals for self-performed work, their bids were submitted 24 hours in advance. The guaranteed maximum price for McCarthy to construct the project is $267,000. I keep messing that up. $267,892,045. This number was finalized on February 22nd. The funding requested today is for the proposed facility. It's shown on your map or on your screens now. The action that you take, the action we'll be asking you to take next week, will also provide for a contract amendment for the construction manager at risk, McCarthy, as well as for the engineer, Black & Veatch. Black & Veatch, along with their teaming partner, HDR, will provide construction phase services for the project. In addition, we have included, in addition in your briefing sheet, we've also included funding and authorization for the general manager to execute the necessary agreements for utility relocation and upgrades for public utilities. So this would include Kansas City Power and Light, Water One, and Kansas Gas Service. I should note that some of those utility agreements will exceed, we anticipate will exceed $100,000. That normally requires a separate board approval. By authorizing me to execute those agreements, that will help us save time in our construction schedule. As we discussed in the COW, our construction schedule is important to maintain throughout this project. The funding also includes costs for other items that are not included in the CMAR scope. Some examples of those are bringing IT fiber to the facility as well as throughout the facility as part of the project. Lab and safety equipment and furniture. All of those things will be procured using the county's purchasing policies and procedures. Lastly, the action includes a reduction in the project administration fee. These are administration fees that are for all the publicly financed capital projects for wastewater. That reduction amount is approximately down from 1.75% to 1.4%. We have a summary of the funding request on the screen. I won't go through all these items. I'll plan to do that next week. The total amount of the request is $306,678,678. And this project was included in our financial model that we presented to you most recently.
Okay. Well, thank you. And to say thank you to not only your staff, but to Black & Veatch and McCarthy. This is a huge project, not only structurally, but also financially, and their excellent work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Questions, Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I agree with what you said. Ms. McCarrick, you shepherded this amazingly well, and this will make this project real. I mean, that will be the decision point. So I'm compelled to ask just one last time. A lot of this has been driven by decisions made by EPA that affect Kansas City and many, if not all, wastewater processors in the nation. Is there just no hope that the EPA will change its mind? I mean, because once we start this, it's going to happen, and there's nothing. There's no hint that the EPA under the current administration might reconsider. You're looking at me very, very narrowly, so I know that's a hopeless request, but I just wanted to ask.
Let's not forget that via negotiations with the EPA and KDHE, we were able to secure significant savings on this project. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
You know, EPA can come in for their fair share of criticism, but I think there was flexibility that benefited ratepayers to a significant event on this project.
Correct. On both sides of the state line. We were able to negotiate being able to treat our wet weather instead of building $200 million in storage. So that was a significant savings to our ratepayers. Likewise, because we won't be sending that flow to the city of Kansas City, Missouri, they will not have to accommodate those wet weather flows either.
But in respect to the EPA, there's no, I mean, this is it.
Well, I would not want to speak on Kansas City's behalf. I think, at least in our case, there's not really a do-nothing alternative.
Okay.
There's a significant asset renewal piece as part of this project as well.
Okay.
So-
Very good.
Mr. Allen?
Just a quick question. McCarthy, I saw that the city of Merriam authorized a $30 million contract to build a new community center. Is this the same McCarthy Construction Company?
I believe it is, yes.
Just wondering. Thank you.
All right, well, this does require a public hearing, so it will remain on action. Next item is a companion. Would the clerk please read?
Item number 7, consider approving the final plat for the Tomahawk Creek wastewater treatment facility property.
Any other comments, Susan?
No, this is companion item, and this is just making it clear, legal description. That's what the plat will provide. So it's just part of the process of the project, essentially.
Well, it will remain on action. Item number 8.
Consider authorizing the purchase of various fleet vehicles and equipment from competitively solicited contracts at an amount not to exceed $1,450,899.57.
Mr. Butler.
Good afternoon. Chris Butler, Fleet Services. A little background on this. In the fall of 2017 and continuing into 2018, Fleet Services met with both the county manager's office representatives and budget and financial planning to conduct a series of meetings with all of our user departments. Purpose was twofold in those meetings. One was to talk about transfer of assets from departments to the Fleet Services Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund, and the other one was to talk about both one-time funding and ongoing funding for replacement needs for departments' vehicles and equipment. As part of that, we talked about the vehicles and equipment that needed to be replaced, and one of the things that we've been urged on behalf of the board and manager's office to do was to create a singular list so that we're not coming up here multiple times with multiple requests throughout the year. That's what we've attempted to do with this request. All units that are identified to be replaced exceed their recommended life cycles, and all units falling below Fleet Services minimum use standards were vetted out to ensure that they're truly vehicles of need. We looked at different options, which include shared use vehicles, unit reductions, and mileage reimbursement to be utilized in lieu of replacement of vehicles, and we actually found things in all of those areas that we could utilize as opposed to replacing vehicles.
This is included in current budget authorization, right?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Chris, maybe before next week, just a couple of questions we can meet offline.
Absolutely.
Thank
You
you.
bet.
We'll keep this on action. Next item.
Item number
Thank you.
9, consider authorizing a contract with MEI Total Elevator Solutions for New Century Adult Detention Center elevator upgrades for a total amount not to exceed $340,602 per the University of Kansas Procurement Services Contract Number 170-10684.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. Janice Phillips, Facilities. This project is approval request for next week or funding approval request for next week will be with the elevator upgrades to elevators 2 and 3 at the New Century Adult Detention Facility. We've been experiencing issues, delays with these elevators. They have been down and under repair. These elevators serve the public, the staff, and the inmates in a 24/7 facilities where they receive heavy usage and they're relied upon for the operations of the facility. Because of the multiple failures that they have experienced, we did research options and have determined that the replacement parts are extremely difficult to get, and in fact, we anticipate that they will no longer be available in the future. With this in mind, our intent is to upgrade those facilities as soon as possible, and to expedite this project, we've chosen to leverage a cooperative contract that is available to our government here. The contract request is in line with the engineer's opinion of probable cost, which was $351,600. That was the estimated cost. With that, I'm open for your questions.
All right, action, consent?
Consent?
That's fine.
All right, so noted. It'll go on consent. Next item.
Item number 10, consider granting an exception to competition and authorizing a contract with the Control Services Company in an amount of $202,400 for building automation controls for Adult Residential Center Building 4 and the ARC Programs Building.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Robert Reeves, the Director of Maintenance with Facilities. To provide a little background on this project is to replace the building automation controls at the Adult Residential Center Programs Building and Residential Center 4. These controls provide the means to control and operate our air conditioning and heating systems. They directly affect energy conservation, occupant comfort, and they also provide alarms and notification when parts of the systems fail to operate properly. The system at the Adult Residential Center is outdated and has become increasingly unreliable. This action would replace the current system with an automated logic system, which is our standard for these types of systems. Since there are currently 3 different brands of automation systems at this campus, it would bring the county closer to having one system at this location. Having one system brings efficiencies in service contracts as well as operations. An exception to competition is requested as Control Services Company serves as the only authorized field office for the greater Kansas City area that provides automated logic products and services. This project is also part of the county's approved 2018 capital replacement program. I'll stand for any questions.
All right, questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Robert, maybe, or Brad, before next week, just a couple of follow-up questions, if I
Be
could.
glad to.
Okay, this being an exception to competition, it'll remain on the action agenda. Next item.
Item number 11, invitation for bid number 2017-061. Consider authorizing the expenditure of $140,000 for the Johnson County Mental Health Department for the for the purchase of medications from multiple vendors and the reclassification of reserves in the amount of $25,000 for an initial agreement period of 12 months with the option to renew for 4 additional 12-month periods.
Okay. Mr. Fortney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tanner Fortney, Mental Health. Before you is a request for us to look at 3 vendors with the medication bid that we propose. This is for medications that we purchase at several of our locations, predominantly the Adolescent Center for Treatment here at the Olathe location, as well as the Adult Detox Unit located at our CSS facility in Shawnee. And we worked with the purchasing staff on these bids. If you have specific questions regarding that process, I'll defer it to those staff that are here this afternoon. But we had 3 vendors, Hy-Vee, Alchemies and Genoa Healthcare Company. And as you can see from looking at the spreadsheet, that different vendors were cheaper on different prices for the different medications that we provide. The largest being Alchemies with the Vivitrol medication, which is an anti-craving medication for alcohol and opioids. And rather than, of course, trying to select one vendor, we thought that it would be best in coordination with the purchasing staff to look at accepting all three vendors, as we've done with many of our different contracts that we've had in the past. And basically, we will use those vendors, whichever is cheaper on whatever medication we're buying, we'll buy from the cheapest vendor. That's the idea. And the other advantage that this would provide is that if in purchasing those medications, if we're in a situation where we have to have a medication delivered by a certain time, which does happen quite often, if we have if the low vendor is out of the medication, we have several backup vendors that we can go to. So and then the only thing as far as the recommendation in the motion is we budgeted $106,000 for medication this year. That's part of the reason this is before you with the bid, and we also received a $25,000 grant from the Drug and Alcohol Council. So that's part of the reason why we're asking for the use of reserve spending authority so that we can expend those funds. But we're not asking for any additional county support.
Okay, questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Tanner, before next week, just a little question to help me understand what I'm looking at
Sure.
on the spreadsheet.
Absolutely.
Action or consent?
Consent's fine.
All right, so noted. Next item.
Item number 12, request for proposal number 2017-086. Consider authorizing a contract with CBM, Inc. for commissary services for the Johnson County Sheriff's Office jail facilities at no cost to the county for a period of 12 months with the option to renew for 4 additional 12-month periods.
Ms. Friedel, good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm Leslie Friedel with the Sheriff's Office, and what's before you today is a contract with CBM for commissary services. We have been using an outside vendor for commissary services since 2002. We are in the third of 4 renewals of our current vendor, and we've had some issues with the last year. They have merged with different companies, and they've had some consolidation issues in terms of service delivery. So we initiated the RFP process a little early. We got 4 respondents. We interviewed 3. I should note that this comes to us with no cost to the county. We actually get a commission on the sales to the inmates. And the one that we're recommending, CBM, had the most competitive percentage that they give back. Although I will say that for us, the most important thing is the service that we're getting, both for our purposes and to the inmates and to their families that are trying to access those services. And this particular vendor, we looked at project scope. We talked to some of the other counties that are currently using them. They came highly recommended. They were the highest ranked firm, or ranked number 1, however you want to call that, with the majority of the people on the committee, which was Jim's staff and sheriff's staff. And
Okay.
I have questions.
Just should note this is commissary service, not food service or anything else.
Right. This is for the commissary only.
Right.
And
Mr. Ashcraft.
Ms. Friedel, did you say that this will be a new vendor for us? Is that what you
yes,
said?
this is a new vendor. We
Very
are
good.
currently using, I believe the contract is currently with Trinity. However, there have been some mergers, and so the respondent was actually Keefe, but they're all owned now by the same company. It was Swanson, then Trinity, Keefe. They're all owned by the same company. They did respond. They did a good job. It's just that the highest ranked one was CBM, and we've gotten, like I say, good references. They seem to understand what we need. They seem very responsive, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Consent?
Yes.
Fine with consent.
All right, so noted. Any other items to consider?
No, sir.
All right, that completes our agenda review. We are scheduled at 1 p.m. or as soon thereafter for the Committee of the Whole meeting in this room, and it may be more like 1:15, but let's try to be back at least within that time period. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is there like